Hello chess enthusiasts, my name is Miha and welcome to my chessrealm YouTube channel. So another interesting game from the recently ended FIDE Grand Swiss tournament from the 6th round between Aryan Tari and Jeffery Xiong. Let's see what happened. Aryan Tari had white pieces and he started with e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to f6, bishop to b5, knight to f6, and now white castles king side. And we have Berlin defense of Ruy Lopez. Black accepts this sacrificed pawn, so knight captures pawn on e4, rook goes to e1, and knight goes back to d6. Now here white could easily regain the pawn back. Bishop to f1 was played, nevertheless. Bishop goes to e7. White still doesn't capture this e-pawn. Knight to c3 was played instead. f6, and now d4. E-pawn is 3 times attacked. Now capturing this pawn on d4 is maybe not the best option. After e-pawn captures on d4, knight goes to d5. Bishop on e7 is pinned. Black can castle king side, but then bishop to f4. White is more or less developed, and while his black is totally blocked. This d4 pawn is going to be recaptured, and advantage in the development is more than enough compensation for the pawn. Okay, so in the game, knight to f7 was played. Knight goes to d5 and now d6, further supporting this e5 pawn. Okay, so white gave up on the pawn but has more chances for developing the pieces. b4 was played, preparing b5, driving the knight away. Now black doesn't bother with a6, preventing this b5 pawn push, and instead castles king side. And white continues with b5, attacking the knight. Knight goes back to b8, c4, rook goes to e8, and bishop to d3. So white has a space and development advantage for a pawn. Knight to d7 was played. Black tried to develop his pieces also. Now here in this position, queen to c2, attacking this h7 pawn would be a logical move here, but white has other things in mind. Knight to h4 was played, opening this diagonal for queen to reach h5 square, attacking the knight. So knight goes to f8 was played immediately, defending h7 square. Knight goes to f5, double attack on this bishop on e7. Bishop cannot go anywhere, so black has no other options but to capture knight on f5 with bishop. Bishop recaptures g6, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes back to e4. White threatens capturing this bishop on e7 and then grab pawn on b7. So rook to b8 was played, defending pawn on b7. White plays bishop to a3. Now white is preparing to capture pawn on e5. Now d pawn won't be able to recapture because then bishop on e7 would be twice attacked. So f pawn would have to recapture, further weakening kingside pawn structure. So in the game, knight to d7 was played. D pawn captures on e5, knight recaptures on e5, and now f4, attacking the knight on e5, and we have reached the critical moment in the game. The correct continuation would be knight to d7. After knight to d7, then white with queen to a4, of course easily gains the pawn back and has bishop pair and space advantage, so a little bit better position. Even after knight to c5, double attack on the queen and the bishop doesn't help, then simply bishop captures on c5. The pawn recaptures rook from a to d1, preparing this cover attack, and of course white has a slight edge here. In the game, however, black plays knight captures pawn on c4, attacking the bishop on a3, but white doesn't care. Queen to d3 was played. Black continues with knight captures bishop on a3, but again white doesn't care. Bishop captures pawn on g6. So white sacrifices a whole piece and threatens to capture this knight also. Let's see, if black plays a random move, let's say a6, then bishop simply captures knight on f7. Now, if king doesn't recapture, then bishop captures rook, and this bishop on e7, of course, is also twice attacked. So here white wins. This is a material advantage. If king captures bishop on f7, then queen to h7 check, king to f8, rook to e3, then it's gonna be mate no matter what black does. So in the game, h pawn captures on g6, queen recaptures on g6 check. Now if king goes to h8, then rook to e3 is deadly. So king goes to e8, rook to e3 was played, nevertheless threatening mate in a couple of moves. So f5 was played, rook goes to g3, black king is trapped, removing the bishop doesn't help because knight controls e7 square. So bishop to g5 was played, and we have interference, f-pawn captures on g5, rook goes to e5 attacking the knight. Knight goes to f6. This knight on a3 is still under attack, so knight captures pawn on b5. Rook goes to h3, e5, and now rook to h7. If black tries to defend with queen to e7 or rook e7, it's queen to g7 mate. So knight from b goes to d6, defending and keeping this e7 square for free was played. Now rook goes to g7, white is tightening the grip. If black plays a random move, let's say a6, then knight to d7 check wins. If queen captures on d7, then rook g8 check, king e7, queen to f6 is checkmate. So this rook on e5 is going to be captured, but it's mate in a couple of moves anyway. For example, if king goes to e7, knight captures on e5. Now this knight on e7 is also going to be captured later with mate. Queen to f8, defending doesn't help, then queen to f6, king e8, queen to e6, queen e7, and rook g8 is checkmate. So in the game, king to e7 was played, avoiding the check. Rook goes to g8, queen is trapped and cannot go anywhere. f4 was played, rook captures on d8, rook recaptures on d8. Well, white has a queen for a rook and knight, still white needs some precision in the game. h4 was played, protecting this g5 pawn, which is twice attacked. Rook goes to h8, trying to grab this h4 pawn. Queen goes to g7, pinning this knight on f7. g6 pawn pushes the threat. So knight goes to f5, attacking the queen. And now, instead of removing, knight captures pawn on d5. Counter attack on the king. Well, king doesn't want to abandon this knight, so rook captures knight on d5, and now queen to f6 check. Well, king has a few options. If king goes to d7, knight on f7 is for free. After king f8, then g6 and knight is pinned, and g7 forking king and the rook is decisive. After king to e8, then probably rook to e1 check. After maybe knight to e3 defending, then g6, removing the defender of this rook on h8, or grabbing the knight. Either way, white is winning. Anyway, in this position, after queen to f6, black had enough and resigned the game. So I hope you like this game, I hope you have learned something from it. If you have any questions, my email is below in the description. Of course, I invite you to visit my Instagram page. That's it for now, and see you soon.